Saturday, the 10th of March 2012, and in the early hours of the morning, police in Dover visit a terrified young girl who's been kidnapped by her ex-boyfriend, Ahmad Otak. She reveals a dark taboo. Just hours earlier, Otac had brutally killed her sister and best friend. But there was an added sadistic twist. Otac had forced her to watch as he revelled in their murders.
He stood up and licked the blood off the knife and he spat down her body.
That is a mark of absolute disrespect.
I just kept thinking, she's dead.
Britain's Darkest Taboos reveals the shocking true stories behind the most horrific acts of familial crime, including murder.
He stood up and licked the blood off the knife and he spat down her body.
Torture.
People call him an animal, but he's not an animal. An animal wouldn't do that to another animal.
And abuse.
I probably should have died, and I'd tell you what, I wish I had.
Wakefield, West Yorkshire, a former mining town, and where a young girl called Elisa Frank would spend her formative years. Elisa is born in 1993. She has an unstable upbringing, but one person she relies on heavily is her younger sister, Kim.
Kim was lovable and just really quite, fun. She was a bit more sort of, confident and everybody loved her type thing, and just a bit different with me. We used to go on a lot of walks and stuff down Canal. Bottom of our street, there were like a horse field, so we used to go down there a lot and try and befriend the horses type thing, I suppose. I suppose just generally doing what children do. People used to mistake us for twins. She was like my best friend, really, I suppose.
Despite early difficulties at home, Kim and Elisa are doing well. At school, they meet another girl called Sam Sykes.
I met Sammy when I was about 8 years old, and I can remember when I first met her sort of thing, then I thought, how come she wants to be friends with me? Because she was just really nice and lovely. And I can remember just sort of thinking, she's like the prettiest girl in the class type thing.
Samantha was always a very popular girl at school. From being very young, she made friends very, very easily. She was very bright at school, academically very gifted.
She came over and I didn't really talk to her and stuff at first because at school I sort of suffered a little bit with being mute, and I think that were out of like social anxiety, so I didn't talk to anyone at all. And it took me a while before I started like speaking properly to her, but the more that she sort of came round and the more that I saw her at school, the more sort of we like grew as friends.
Because Samantha was so confident, she always stuck up for her, always looked out for her.
It was just nice because none of the other kids really liked me, and she really didn't. I suppose it just built my confidence up a little bit as well, and she was just really fun to be around. She was beautiful inside and out, really, just in every aspect that a person can be, I suppose.
Elisa and Samantha were actually inseparable. They were delightful children, all three of them delightful, beautiful.
By the time she is 14, Elisa and her sister Kim begin to go off the rails.
It's hard to sort of like pinpoint exactly what it was that was sort of like the problems and stuff, but we were a bit sort of like unruly. It were mainly just sort of hanging around with the wrong people, drinking, not going to school, not going home at night sometimes and staying out, and just sort of not complying to the rules that you should sort of when you're at that age.
The police once phoned me to ask if I knew where she was, both her and Kimberly, and it was around 11:30 p.m. at night. And obviously I didn't know where they were, and Samantha was asleep in bed.
That's when me and Kim became really quite close, and and starting out with the drinking and things like that.
The sisters remain close friends with Sam, and like in their childhood, she continues to support them.
She looked out for both me and Kim. She'd known us both for a long time, and she always used to say, you can both do better for yourselves. You're not the sort of people that should just let your lives go down the drain drinking or any of that, because you've got potential.
She was trying to help and sort out those problems. Unfortunately, when you're in your early teens, that's very difficult to do.
When we started dating as teenagers, just sort of spiralled. And the things that I suppose normal teenagers do, we just took to the extreme.
Psychologist Emma Kenny works with victims of familial crime. She's been looking into the relationship between Sam and the two sisters, Elisa and Kim.
Sam would have seen that Elisa was somebody who was quite vulnerable, maybe didn't have many friends, and it's striking that a young person who could see and witness such vulnerabilities wanted to help. It really does demonstrate that Sam was a really good Samaritan and felt that she could help Elisa.
Very shortly after that, the mum moved house and the girls moved schools, and that was when the contact between Samantha and the two sisters became more sporadic. With long periods of having no contact, really.
Friends that we did have stopped speaking to us because of, how we were acting and things like that.
But between them, Elisa and Kim managed to find an outlet, a way of coping with their lives.
Me and Kim both started writing poetry when we were about, I think probably just coming up to like us early teens sort of thing. Poetry just sort of, I suppose, helps us share our feelings between each other. And then sometimes we used to like show my mum the poems and things like that. And then it just went from there really, and then we just continued to write. Then we sort of discussed getting as poems published together, because people had sort of like commented that they liked them and things like that.
But comforting each other is to be short-lived. In 2007, Elisa is put into care, and Kim is sent to live in a foster home. For the first time in their lives, the sisters are split up.
Not only was Elisa losing the support of her family home, but she was losing the support of her very close sister, and that would leave her open and very, very vulnerable.
It was absolutely heartbreaking. Everything just fell through, my whole world just fell apart. I just cried and cried and cried.
Shortly after moving into the care home, Elisa meets Ahmad Otak, another teenager with an unstable past.
First met Ahmed in the kids' home. I was 14, he claimed he was 15. He'd come from Afghanistan. I didn't really sort of speak to him right much, and his English wasn't so good. He used to make me cringe a bit. He used to be a bit sort of pervy, gesturing for kisses and stuff.
But what Elisa doesn't know is that this teenager is not all he seems. Criminal behaviour analyst Laura Richards works with police forces on major crimes across the country. She's come to Dover to assess how Otac may have entered the country.
Otac manages to come into the country illegally, and he spins a whole web of deceit about his age, clearly with it uppermost in mind that will entitle him to social services and social care. So he's somebody who's clearly manipulative, who has thought things through, and it also puts him in contact with quite vulnerable people as well, and that's actually where he meets Elisa.
Elisa doesn't spend much time with Otac, but then several years later, they meet again. And this time, Elisa falls for his charms.
I bumped into him in the street and felt a bit sort of sorry for him. And I thought, he's not that bad, surely. I've just been a bit mean to him, sort of thing. Because I was going through a hard time then, and I didn't have Kim and I didn't have any friends. Then I'd sort of meet up with him. And she used to come over, bring me gifts, give me advice. It just felt like he cared about me a little bit at the time. Then he just sort of asked me to move in with him, and that's when I went to go live with him then. They were making a lot of promises as well. They were going to take us to France and they were going to take us to do this and that, and quite sort of grandiose sort of ideas, I suppose, how he could take me to go live in America, and it was just it just seemed really fantastic and stuff at the time, because I was just so depressed, and I just thought, yeah, I can do that, nobody cares about me over here, nobody will be bothered, I can get away, I can have this fantastic life. It all seemed really exciting, and when I first went to live with him I thought, wow, my life's just going to be something good, amazing, I'm gonna become a somebody sort of thing.
But best friend Sam has concerns about Elisa's new boyfriend.
She told me that she was concerned about Elisa's relationship with Ahmad Otak. She felt there was something wrong with the relationship, and she said that he gave her a bad feeling.
And a few months into the relationship, Otak begins to change.
His behaviour and things like that started to change very quickly. I was told there were certain things that I couldn't do. Like at first I can remember him just sort of saying stuff like, oh yeah, from where I come from, you shouldn't sort of be friends with other boys. And in my head then I just sort of thought, well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, fine, that's fine. He's treating me well, he's going to be doing this, that and the other for me, that's fine. And then it just sort of slowly built up to the point where I couldn't ask a man for the time.
Ahmed starts to systematically break down Elisa's sense of self. He starts to introduce a really clever side to his control. Arguing culture is really important because it gives reason to her as to why he's acting this way. She wants to believe that he loves her and cares for her and wants to give her a better life. And she also wants to please him.
I wasn't allowed to go to the library, that was stopped. Certain programmes I couldn't watch on telly. Certain books I couldn't read. He used to tell me all the time that English girls are all sluts, they're all slags, they're dirty. I couldn't do anything without it maybe triggering him. So sort of like if I needed a toilet and stuff like that, then I'd have to sort of like ask for his permission first. Or just like any little thing that I did.
But what Elisa couldn't know was that this was just the start. There would be much worse to come.
Ahmad Otak was a very controlling individual, and that he was wanting to influence everything she did. I firmly believe that he had the opinion that if I can't have Elisa Frank, then nobody can have Elisa Frank, and nobody will stop in my way.
In 2011, Elisa Frank is living with her controlling and manipulative boyfriend, Ahmad Otak, an illegal immigrant who's preyed on Elisa's vulnerability. Elisa feels alone. Her sister is living away, and her best friend Sam is carving herself a career in modelling.
Samantha wanted to be successful in whatever she did. She loved the idea of being successful as a model. She'd done so much for such a young age. She made a statement one day, "I ain't trying to be the difference, I am the difference."
But even though Sam's making a success of her life, Elisa's relationship with Otak is still on her mind.
She felt there was something wrong with the relationship, and she said that he gave her a bad feeling. At that point in time, she did have contact with Elisa, but it wasn't continuous contact. And in fact, Elisa would kind of disappear for weeks at a time, where she wouldn't answer text messages or she wouldn't answer the phone, etc. to Samantha. And Samantha used to get quite upset about that because she felt that she was kind of dropping her as a friend, I guess.
But what Sam doesn't know is that Otak is controlling Elisa's every move, and now he's starting to control who she's allowed to see.
Ahmed breaks down all of Elisa's support. He stops her seeing her friends and makes sure that he really isolates her. He wants to make it so that he owns Elisa and that whatever he says goes. He's a narcissist with an incredibly dangerous temperament and someone with a great deal of potential to do enormous harm.
He used to come out with stuff like, oh, I'd love to just sort of like, just wipe out the whole of humanity type thing because he hates everybody apart from me.
Otak is revealing his dark side.
He used to like write a list sort of thing and like draw pictures of like stick figures which were the people that were on his kill list. It was just sort of a list that he used to threaten me with. He used to like threaten to kill like children and innocent people. He used to say, if you stay with me, trust me, it's sort of like good for you because you'll be saving lives.
And now Otak would start to target the very people Elisa relies on.
In fact, he'd threatened to petrol bomb her mum's house, and obviously I wasn't aware of all that information at the time.
He used to say that he'd kill Kim, or he'd kill Sammy, or he'd kill my dad or my brother.
I believe that Elisa stayed with him through fear, because he'd made threats to kill her family and threats to kill Samantha.
It's quite a common aspect in cases that I'd worked on where perpetrators will use the things that matter the most to the victims. In the main, it tends to be loved ones, so children, mothers, best friends, dads, and they will make threats against those individuals, threats to harm, threats to kill. Bear in mind, the victim knows the perpetrator the best. They will understand whether it's credible or not, and it's all about controlling and manipulating and keeping that victim in situ.
By the summer of 2011, Kim, Elisa's sister, has moved back to Wakefield. Otac's obsession with keeping Elisa away from those she loves becomes more intense.
They used to tell me that I could throw acid in my face or it'd set my mother's house on fire. My only thoughts really at that point were that I hoped that he didn't hurt my family, and that if I were going to die, then I wanted him to promise first that he wasn't going to go and hurt my mum and my little sister.
Ahmed suggests to Elisa that if she stays with him, she's basically protecting the people that she loves. And the one thing that we know about Elisa is that she feels closely connected to people like Sammy and Kimberly. So in a way, by ensuring her fear and by ensuring their safety through that fear, it means that he has absolute control over Elisa.
September 2011. Otac takes his abuse to the next level, proving he's capable of terrifying violence.
The first time things started sort of going seriously wrong was when he came back one day from work. I knew that he was angry with me because I could tell by how he wasn't speaking to me and stuff, like on phone and stuff, because usually he'd phone me numerous times. So I was just sitting in bedroom and I was a bit scared at that point because just of the threats that he'd been making prior to that and stuff. And then he just took out a knife, like a huge knife basically, and at that point I just thought I was going to die because I'd not experienced anything like that before. He told me they were going to kill me then.
And if she dares to make a sound, Otac has a plan to silence her.
He got a sewing needle and told me they were going to sew my mouth up if I screamed, and then decided that I was dirty, so he was definitely going to kill me. So then he hit me a few times.
Elisa knows her life could be in danger. She has to leave. But Otac tells her he will harm Kim and Sam if she doesn't return. And his threats work.
Normally it takes victims about 7 attempts to be able to leave a controlling and abusive partner. And actually, Elisa takes those threats so seriously, it's the thing that coercively controls her and drives her back to him because she wants to protect the people that she loves and cares about.
If I didn't think anyone were going to get hurt and he didn't make any threats against my friends or my family, then I know for a fact I'd have left. It wasn't like I wasn't staying in the relationship. Do you know how some people do out of love for the other person that's abusing them? It was just purely out of fear. There was no love at that point, at all.
Samantha was very upset that Elisa returned to that relationship, but nevertheless wanted to continue to support her, and I supported her in doing that.
And it was the worst decision of my life, I suppose. Yeah.
Over the following weeks and months, the abuse continues. Elisa is so scared, she devises an emergency escape plan.
I sort of said to it, if I ever send a text and it just says a D, just because it was just simple, then it means basically I'm in danger, so you need to phone the police, but I'll only ever send you that if it gets to the stage where it's got a knife out in front of me again and I think he's going to use it, sort of thing. But I couldn't really talk to Kim about him much because most of the time when I saw her, he'd be present. So I used to be too scared to say anything to her most of the time.
I would imagine that Elisa's life was horrific.
February 2012, Elisa can't take it anymore. She leaves for a second time.
I didn't know on that particular day that I was going to leave then, but I just thought, he's gone to work, I'm getting my stuff. I got a bag together and then I just left. First night I stayed at Kim's and then I went to go stay at my mum's and asked my mum if I could move back in.
Samantha was delighted when Elisa went back to her mum, and I think she felt that she'd done something really positive in supporting her to do that.
In a way, because he wasn't making threats against anyone, then I thought to myself, oh, I've got a bit of hope now, maybe things could be okay. And because I had Kim round me, then we were both sort of talking to each other about things that we could do in the future.
Elisa finally plucks the courage up to leave, and I think you have to really respect her for doing that, because she must have been absolutely terrified. This is a man who has threatened her and her family consistently, and she hasn't known what his capabilities are. So to leave is absolutely enormously brave.
Just thought to myself, there is no way on earth I'm going back. I thought, it's just all empty threats like people say. People are right, he's just been trying to scare me, he's not really going to do anything.
For the first time in a long while, Elisa feels happy and safe. But that happiness would be short-lived. Friday, 9th of March 2012. It's mid-afternoon, and Elisa asks Otac to bring her belongings to her sister's flat.
He came in and then he asked for a glass of water, so I brought him into the kitchen and gave him a glass of water. And he just sort of said, "Are you definitely not coming back again?" And then I said, "No, I'm not coming back." He went into the living room where Kim was on the sofa and offered her a cig, and she took a cig off him.
Otac may look relaxed, but he's moments away from a massacre and a deadly plot to permanently remove the people Elisa relies on most.
All I can remember now is just sort of like, Kim fell onto me sort of thing, and I got pushed onto bed a bit. And then I just turned round, and as soon as I turned round, I saw the knife. Hearing Kim screaming, really horrific screams, like something that you can't really describe unless you sort of have heard something like that.
Otac seems to revel in his deadly act.
And he were calling her a stupid bitch and stuff like that while they were stabbing her. And the way that he were doing it as well, it was just out of, I don't know, complete hatred or something. They were smiling and stuff and gloating a bit "Oh, you see, you weren't taking her away from me, you stupid bitch," and stuff like that, and then saying that I should have never left him and that did I think he was just going to let me go, sort of, just like that. And then shortly after that, that's when, she got the blow to her neck sort of thing.
Kim drops to the floor.
She just sort of laid down and started gurgling type thing. And I can just remember thinking, hang on. I know she'd obviously been injured seriously, but I didn't expect her to just die.
Tragically, Elisa's sister, the person she loved more than anyone, dies. And Otac has one final insult.
After Kim died, tried sitting down next to me and kissing me. He stood up and licked the blood off the knife, and he spat down her body. I think I was just rendered in a state of complete shock.
That is a mark of absolute disrespect, and it's intentional. Ahmed intends to let Elisa know that he is not only capable of murder, but that he has enjoyed it, and that he has an absolute core reason for doing it, to let her know that should she do anything, he'll take her next. And that must have been absolutely terrifying for Elisa to witness.
But Otac hasn't finished. He reveals he wants to kill again, and the person he wants to kill is Elisa's best friend, Sam.
He told me to call her, and then held the phone to my ear while I called her, and then told me what to say, and then I said what he told me to say.
Survival instinct for Elisa is kicking in. She wants to escape. She doesn't know how to get away. And by calling her friend, she feels that potentially there is one route, and one route only, that Sammy will realise that she needs help and will indeed help her.
Elisa is paralysed with fear. She's now hoping and praying her best friend won't walk straight into Otac's deadly trap.
I was hoping that she'd be able to pick something up from my voice and then maybe phone the police.
And when I saw the note, I had a bad feeling. It's a mother's instinct.
Friday, the 9th of March 2012. Elisa Frank has just been made to watch her ex-boyfriend stab her sister to death in cold blood. But his deadly act of revenge is far from over. Otac is destroying the people Elisa needs most in her life, and his next target is Elisa's best friend, Sam.
Last time that I saw Samantha, she was sat on the sofa and she'd been working early in the morning. She'd come home and she was talking about Elisa. and saying she should have come to meet me yesterday, Mum, because I was going to do her a CV on my computer, and she hadn't turned up, and I was actually off work that day, and I went out and left her in the house, and she was fine.
Elisa recalls being forced to contact her friend and ask her to come round.
I was hoping that she'd be able to pick something up from my voice, and then maybe, I don't know, that she'd, phone the police, or because she knew about the situation. He told me not to dare try escape. So I went and cut some cable from like Kim's stereo, and then tied my ankles and my wrists, and then told me when she came to call her in.
From day one, Sammy has been somebody who's protected her and cared for her and looked after her emotionally. She was a good Samaritan in her life, so it makes sense that in her moment of need, she wants to call upon a friend who's always known how to help her.
And when I got home, there was a note in the kitchen which said, "Gone to see Elisa, back soon, with a kiss, Sammy." And when I saw the note, I had a bad feeling. And I can't really explain where that came from.
Sam sets off, thinking her friend needs her, unaware of the terror that awaits.
She would have kickboxed her and stuff, so I thought she might be able to do something, she might be able to disarm him. But I heard her shout like Elisa sort of thing. And I can just remember like the same screams that I heard from Kim, but a bit more intensified. It dragged her into the living room and she was gurgling. And I knew pretty much straight away then that she was dying. And then he laid her on the floor next to Kim. He took Sammy's car keys and took Kim's money that she had on the table.
And just as when he murdered Kim, Otac revels in his sadistic slaughter.
It seems like he'd enjoyed it. And very calm. No emotion at all after he'd done it either, just none.
I had a gut feeling there was something very wrong. And all that I can actually say about that is that it's a mother's instinct.
Two young girls are dead, but Elisa's nightmare is far from over.
It done tired me, and at that point it said a couple of times, if you tried to escape, I will kill you.
You have to imagine what's going on in Elisa's mind. Her sister and her best friend have just been murdered in front of her. So there is absolutely no way that she's going to cause a fuss. She's not going to struggle because the potential is she's going to die too.
Otac bundles Elisa into Sam's car at knife point, leaving the city and heading south.
He told me we were going down to Dover to get on the back of the lorries and that we were going to take me to Afghanistan.
Meanwhile, Sam's mum is increasingly concerned.
I tried to phone her and her phone was switched off, which was unusual because there was no reason for her to switch her phone off. So not long after 6 o'clock, I actually went to look for Samantha because I was becoming concerned. And throughout that evening, I actually went several times to Kimberly's flat.
Judy repeatedly knocks on the door, but there's no answer.
I couldn't understand where she'd gone. I went to see Elisa's mum, who didn't know where the girls were either. Samantha was missing for a number of hours through that night, and I just kept thinking, she's dead. And it's not something that you can actually explain to anybody. It was just as if part of me had gone. It was an horrendous experience. The anxiety, feeling sick, just not really knowing what to do with yourself. You know, it's a mother's worst nightmare. It was like torture.
Meanwhile, Elisa is in the middle of her own terrifying nightmare.
I started crying. I can remember him turning to me and saying, "Why are you crying? Everything's going to be fine," just completely delusional. I don't think he understood that he'd done anything wrong in any sense. He just seemed just plain out not bothered.
He just sees people who are in the way as problems that need to be removed. And that's giving Elisa an incredibly clear message. Be good, or I'll kill you. And that's a powerful message to give anyone.
Shortly before midnight, after a 6-hour journey, they arrive in Dover.
We managed to find his way to the lorries. I can remember walking through the streets with him and there being nothing up and nobody around, just like the streets completely dead really.
Well, he's probably headed here to Dover to the lorry port because it's the point of exit. He sees that maybe he came in that way and therefore he's now trying to get out that very same way.
Otac meets another immigrant and sees their chance to get across the channel.
And Ahmed passed me a jumper with the knife. When he closed the doors, then that guy just sort of turned to me and said, why are you getting out of the country? You've got a passport. And I just told him what had happened. And then he just said, leave it to me. So I just stayed silent. And then he called Ahmed to let us off the lorry and they started speaking.
The second Otac's back is turned, Elisa sees her chance and makes a break for it.
When Ahmed turned to look at me sort of thing, as if to say, we're leaving this guy or whatever, then I just sort of shouted, stay the fuck away from me sort of thing. I just started running then. And I was like screaming and stuff. I was just completely petrified. Just running sort of as fast as I could really to get away from him. My heart was just completely racing because if he'd have caught me then that would have basically pretty much been the end of me. Luckily though that guy that were with us sort of was slowing him down and stopping him, so I managed to jump over the fence of some people that had come outside to tell us to be quiet and just run straight into their house and tell them to phone police. They were just looking at me like I was crazy or something. I was telling them that they needed to lock the doors.
The courage that it must have taken for Elisa to start running the moment that that stranger risked his life to save hers must have taken every last bit of her strength. Running away from that scene, thinking that potentially Ahmed was just a few steps behind her must have been absolutely horrifying, and it must have literally taken the last bit of energy that she had to escape.
I was in the house and the police pulled up outside. I told them to phone West Yorkshire Police like straight away and send somebody round to my sister's address.
250 miles away in Wakefield, DCI Simon Atkinson is on duty and learns there could be 2 dead bodies in a flat.
We forced entry to that property to make sure we wanted to get in as quickly as possible. And we were met by a very tragic scene that faced the officers. But this was particularly distressing for everybody because we've got 2 young girls there who have died in the same place, and the level of violence was excessive.
The police find Sam's car, and Julie gets the visit she's been dreading.
The police turned up in the early hours of the morning, 4 policemen, who said that they'd found her car in Dover. And they wanted to know if she was at home, and obviously she wasn't, which then led to me being even more concerned about her whereabouts. But in my heart of hearts, I knew this wasn't going to end well. There was something very seriously wrong. And that's where we were told that 2 deceased females had been found in Kimberly's flat. I think I just went into some kind of a shock where everything seemed surreal. The worst thing in the world was always for me when somebody loses a child, and it was the one thing that I asked, if there's a God, don't ever let that happen to me. Don't ever let that happen to me. And of course it has happened to me.
Officers now have a double murder investigation on their hands. Elisa has had a terrifying 10-hour ordeal.
It was probably a couple of hours after we'd been in the police car and they just sort of turned and told me that they'd been found and they'd been arrested.
And just when she thinks her ordeal is over, the officers have devastating news.
Started asking me about what had happened, so I started telling them in the order that I could remember. And then we got about halfway through, and one of them told me they were arresting me for the murder of my sister and Sammy. Which at that point I just broke down, like, completely. But at that point I sort of thought, well, I'm going down for it. But I didn't really care about that. It wasn't that I was bothered about, it was just the fact of people even thinking for half a second, do you know, that I might hurt sort of like my sister or Sammy.
Elisa is taken back to Wakefield for questioning. But will she be able to convince detectives that she is, in fact, an innocent victim?
I was confronted with a very frightened young woman, and we had to put specialist officers with her to gain her confidence so we could draw out from her, in her own time, what had actually happened.
March 2012. West Yorkshire police have a brutal double murder on their hands. Ahmad Otak has been arrested after stabbing Kimberly Frank to death and then luring Sam Sykes to the same fate. Elisa Frank, the young girl who was forced to watch the sadistic murders of her sister and best friend and then kidnapped, has now also been arrested.
I made the decision we'll treat them as suspects. If people are telling the truth will always come out. I was confronted with a very frightened young woman, and we had to put specialist officers with her to gain her confidence so we could draw out from her, in her own time, what had actually happened. And very quickly we were able to establish that Elisa Frank was a victim and was treated as such.
When I found out I was no longer a suspect, I was massively relieved. I'd have rather have been dead at that point than people believing that or even thinking it for half a second.
I must pay tribute to, her resilience and her courage. She'd gone through an horrendous ordeal. She'd seen her own sister being murdered and then a friend being murdered literally in front of her eyes, and she was vital and able to piecing together what had actually happened, and she proved to be an invaluable witness.
Elisa is cooperative. Otac is anything but. He continues to spin his web of lies, insisting to officers he's under 21.
When interviewing Otac, the police firmly suspected that he was much older than what he was letting on. So they employ a number of investigative techniques and other experts to assist them with that process. And so through teeth, through dentistry, and also through bones, they can actually establish his true age. You have to bear in mind that, of course, he's come from elsewhere. He's come from Afghanistan, so all the usual records that we would have as someone over here do not exist for him. So it is why they spend time, money and resource trying to establish exactly how old he is, because it makes a difference in terms of establishing criminal responsibility and putting him before the court.
The search for the truth pays off. The evidence suggests Otac is at least 21 years of age. On the 5th of October 2012, Ahmed Otak pleads guilty to the murders of Kimberly Frank and Sam Sykes. For Sam's mum, it's a chance to come face to face with the man who took away her daughter.
To hear the detail of the injuries that both these young people suffered was devastating. And you just think, what is he thinking while he's sat there? Because he never showed any emotion whatsoever.
I pay tribute to both Elisa's family and Samantha Sykes' family, for how they conducted themselves. They were in a room with a man who had murdered their loved ones, and he didn't show any emotion whatsoever.
Most of the time I'm angry towards him. I just don't let that anger sort of take hold of me, because it don't make a difference to get angry.
8 months after the brutal killings, Otac is sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 33 years and 124 days. Finally, the families have justice, but they'll live with the repercussions of his sadistic actions for the rest of their lives.
When he was sentenced, you have a kind of a feeling of euphoria, because you think, that's it, it's done. He's been sentenced, he's got a long sentence, but that soon goes. And so, within a couple of days, actually, I felt probably worse than I'd felt for a significant period of time, and I just fell to pieces. I'm still grieving for Samantha, as are many other people, and you learn to live with what's happened.
I miss Kim more than anything, really. I just sort of block it out most of the time. I know for a fact that I'll never, ever be the same again, and I won't ever sort of have that bond with anybody, and I don't want to either.
I would describe Ahmad Otak as an extremely dangerous offender. He's killed two young women, literally in cold blood, and I think he's capable, and I'm sure he would have been very capable of killing Elisa Frank, and I think that's reflected in the sentencing he got as well. I think he's a very dangerous individual that has shown no remorse whatsoever.
The last memory of Samantha is of this very beautiful, bright young person who put others before herself. And I'm honoured to have been her mum.
Despite the devastating loss, Julie's determined Sam's death will not be in vain and hopes to help others, just like Sam did.
One of the real positive actions that we've taken as a family since Samantha's death is to establish the Samantha Sykes Foundation Trust, whose purpose is to work with not-for-profit organisations who support and help victims of child sexual exploitation or children and young people who are considered to be at risk of child sexual exploitation. We've been overwhelmed by some of the community support, and the generosity of local people has restored some of our faith in human kindness.
Elisa is now taking comfort in writing, a passion she shared with her sister Kim. The tragic events have made her determined to fulfil their shared dream of getting a book published.
Since I've started writing, I've been feeling a lot better, and I've noticed that bits of sort of my past and things that I haven't been able to process so much come out in my writing, and then I always feel sort of a bit like I've had a weight taken off my shoulders like afterwards.
By continuing to write, by not allowing Ahmed to have stolen the one connection that she really has left with her sister, even though this is a tragedy, the truth is that she is no longer under his control, and he is someone who finally is paying the price that he deserves.
And it's her that I write for, really. It's not like anyone else or myself. It's just the whole thing is just the beginning sort of it anyway. I'm starting to definitely get things together, and if she was around, she'd be proud of me for doing, and so I've tried to not let it damage me to the extent that it could.
In respect of Elisa, she has an opportunity now that I hope she'll grasp and move forward with her life and do something wonderful. I know that she's interested in poetry and she wants to publish a book, and both Sammy and Kimberly will be looking down saying, "Go for it, girl, go for it."